Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta Social Science Program. And for an undergraduate social networks course, let's talk about homophily and homophily in ego networks. What's the definition of homophily? Well, if we look at our textbook, Social Network Analysis by Christina Prell, 2012, she'll define homophily as the social situation of actors, nodes, preferring to have social relations with others who are similar to themselves. Homo indicates similarity. Phily, as a suffix, indicates liking. Liking others. But then she goes on to say, wait a minute, there are actually two reasons for homophily. One of them is liking, one of them is choice, one of them is preference, that individuals seek out and find others who are similar to themselves and form ties with these others regardless of the organizational setting, that is the group setting. Okay, that's the notion that if you have a group of people, some of them are little dot people, and there are just a couple who are big dot people, that all the little dot people will form ties with each other, but they won't really seek out the big tie people, and the big tie people will seek out ties with each other. Despite the presence of some big tie people, there will be no connections between the little dot people and the big dot people in that group. And despite the fact that the big dot people are surrounded by lots of little dot people in this example, it's the big dot people who will seek each other out across a crowded room and form ties with each other because they choose to, and they choose to ignore everyone else who is around them. Well, what's the other possibility? The other possibility is induced homophily. And this distinction does not come from Prell directly, but comes from Miller McPherson and Lynn Smith-Levin in work that's almost 30 years old and is referenced in Christina Prell's textbook. Induced homophily is the idea that, well, the composition of a group, composition means makeup, how many different sorts of people there are in a group, produces the appearance of homophily. The idea is that ties form in groups, that groups contain similar people, and therefore that ties will be between similar people. What do we mean that groups contain similar people? Well, think about the university that you're at. If you are at a university and you're taking classes and you're interacting with other students, you are disproportionately interacting with people who have a high school graduation but do not have a BA if you're a bachelor's degree, if you're an undergraduate student. If you're a graduate student and you're at a university and you're taking courses, you are going to hang out all the time with other people who do have BAs but do not yet have a higher a degree, an MA or a PhD or something like that. And if you're a faculty member of the university, you're going to spend a whole lot of time with other faculty, a lot of faculty meetings. And who are those faculty members? Well, if it's a university of good repute, those faculty members are going to be people who have appropriate terminal degrees, the PhD. So you're going to spend a lot of time hanging out with other PhDs. That's homophily. Why is it happening? Is it because undergraduates hate people with PhDs? Is it that people with PhDs hate people with no college education? No, it's because the general institution of the university and particular subgroups within a university, undergraduate classes, graduate school classes, and faculty rooms or faculty meetings, faculty senates, are segregated. So they only contain people of certain groups. Or if there's the occasional PhD thrown into a classroom to teach, they're only 1 out of 30, 1 out of 60. Or if you go to a really big university, 1 out of 300. So the idea of induced homophily is different. It says, well, gosh, if you have a group and it is mostly little dot people and only a couple of big dot people, we're going to find that the little dot people form ties mostly with little dot people. Why? Because there's not that many big dot people there. The chances, randomly speaking, by chance alone of forming a tie with a big dot person, especially the more little dot people we have, well, it's really small. On the other hand, big dot people, right, if they're in that group that has very few of other people like them, if they form ties randomly, it'll look like the opposite of homophily. It'll look like, if we just look at their ties, that they seek out people who are different. But really, it's just that they're surrounded by people who are different. By the way, what is the opposite of homophily? Heterophily. Right? That would be the opposite of homophily. Hetero, diverse, different, phily, liking. Okay. Induced homophily says this appearance of liking, whether for similar people or for different people, is possibly an illusion, and it's a reflection of the fact that we live in segregated environments surrounded by people like ourselves. So there's a problem with Prell's definition, right? If she assumes in her definition that it's all about preference, then it seems to exclude the possibility of induced homophily. So we need a definition of homophily that is not assuming that one of these kinds of homophily is operating and not the other. So how could we do that? Let's talk about chance. Choice homophily, in thinking about chance, would say that we might find it would be happening. It could be happening when social ties between similar people occur more often than chance alone would predict. Okay, so this is the instance in which lots of little dot people, a few big dot people, and yet the big dot people are the ones who form the tie to each other, despite the fact that there are lots of little dot people in the room. If that happens more often than chance alone would predict, then that's consistent, at least, with choice homophily. But induced homophily happens when the share of social ties that occur between an ego, here's ego, and similar people is the same as the share of people in a group who are similar to ego. So if we think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that there are 5 people in the group who are little dot people, and that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other people in the group who are big dot people, right? Then we would expect 5 plus 5 is 10. 5 out of 10 of the ties from our ego to go out to little dot people, and 5 out of 10 of them to go to big dot people. Homophily measured this way is not simply the same as the proportion of people in an ego's network who are like ego, which is Prell's definition on page 130. Instead, homophily is all about the difference between that proportion and chance. If actually in this ego network on the right, where there are 5 big dot people and 5 little dot people all around our ego, if it turns out that our ego makes 5 ties, that 5 out of the 5 are to little dot people, all of a sudden that looks like choice homophily. Despite the presence of 5 big dot people, our little ego makes connections with exclusively other little people. If, on the other hand, maybe there are 5 alters that our little friend here makes, and it's something like 2 out of 5 are little dot people, or 3 out of 5 are little dot people. Well, that's close to about half, right? Because half would be 2.5, but you can't have 0.5 friendships. That starts to look like induced homophily, because the share of associates that are like ego is about roughly proportional to what's available by chance. The comparison of the actual proportion to the proportion we'd expect by chance tells us what kind of homophily we might have going on. To think about the effect of group composition in a little bit more detail, let's take a look at your Prel textbook again, page 131, figure 5.9. So pause the video if you need to, and turn to page 131. Look at figure 5.9. Good. So these are two ego networks. Here's one ego. Here's another ego. Right? And remember, Prell's definition is all about preference. It's kind of assuming choice. But if we take this network to be representative of the group surrounding Jim, then does Jim really have a chance here to form a child with a female? Now, it's possible that there are isolates out there that we don't see who are females that Jim just simply hasn't gotten in touch with. In order to answer that question, right, we'd need to see the broader context of the ego of what's around the ego network, the group that the ego network forms in. Did George here, when George becomes the alter of Sophia, did George, have a chance to form a tie with another male in this other network? Again, group context matters. If we want to talk about homophily in ego networks, we have to know how many others of different sorts are available, both to Sophia as an ego and to Jim. Is this a network that's in an environment that is 50% male and 50% female? Or is it one that is only 10% female? If it's only 10% female, the existence of a tie between Sophia and Anna is really important because it's disproportional. It's interesting they found each other, perhaps across a crowded room. And that would be a sign of what? Choice homophily. I want to provide another example because I know that thinking about homophily this way in the abstract is sometimes a little tough. So let's take a look at something out there in the real world, or perhaps I should say the virtual world, a website called the Bear Club. This is in the UK, and it is an interesting social network. It's one in which people upload pictures of their teddy bears. So they take a picture of the teddy bear. They don't put up their own picture. In fact, they don't use their own name. They create a name for their teddy bear, and they blog in the persona of their teddy bear. Their profile picture shows their teddy bear. And they make bear buddies with other people's accounts, well, bears' accounts, really. They make bear buddies with other teddy bears. They also, interestingly, for our purposes today, join one of 8 bear clans. Those 8 bear clans are named Aswale, Baibo, Basindo, Bruang, Buka, Kinnaman, Cody, and Nanook. Those are the names of them. And so people, when they join, they pick a clan. And then they go on to form bear buddies. Right? So here's a homophily question. Do people, when they pick a clan, do they tend to make bear buddies with people just in their clan? Or do they tend to make bear buddies with people of all kinds of clans? Is there, in short, homophily on the status of clan? Okay. Or is there no homophily in clan status among these 1,783 active accounts? Now, I'm not going to show you 1,783 active accounts today. We're not going to do 1,783 active ego networks because that would take a long time. Instead, let's just take a look at 10. So I'm picking 10 out of the 1,783 active participants. They are our ego nodes, and we're going to look at their bear buddies to look for alters. To do that, we can go to the Bear Club, and if you look at the Bear Club, you'll notice that every member has a unique member number. Well, so I went to random.org, which is a random number generator, and using that random number generator, I got 10 random numbers, and those numbers became the members of our sample. If you want to take the time, you can go through this slide and the next slide on the video, pause and review, rewind, to take a look at the characteristics of them. You'll notice that they are members of many different clans. So Benjamin is in the Basindo clan, Minty is in the Buka clan, Fifi is in the Baibo clan. And then we would read across to find out that, well, some of our sample include people who, bears, who have no alters, no bear buddies. But there are some who have a number of bear buddies, a number of alters. Now, for Ted, for instance, our number 5 out of 10, we would notice he's in the Nanook clan, but he has alters. His alters are Buddy Bear, Bruang clan, Charlie Brown Bear in Buka clan, and Pooh Bear in the Kinnaman clan. None of them in the same clan. That's interesting. We could just look at the lists, right? And we could say, wow, following the Prell model, let's just take a look at the portion that are the same. But that would not be fair. We might say, for instance, taking a look at Beatrice, okay, to give an example of why it's not fair, that, well, she's in the Kinnaman clan, okay, one of the 8 clans. And look at how many of her alters are Kinnamans. Wow, we might say there's some real homophily going on there, right? And yet, let me show you something, some information. If we look at members of the Bear Club, and each of them chooses a clan, it turns out a lot of them choose Kinnaman. There are 8 clans, right? But slightly over 40% of all Bear Club members choose to be in the Kinnaman clan. Only 2% choose to be in the Basindo clan. And the other clans are somewhere in between. So, is the presence of a lot of alters that are Kinnamans by Beatrice, who's in Kinnaman, is that just what we'd expect by chance because there's a lot of Kinnaman bears in the Bear Club? Or is it more than we would predict by chance? What is the chance prediction? This is your chance prediction. We would predict by chance alone, if there's no preference for bears that are in the same clan when you choose your bear buddies, we'd expect that Beatrice would have about 41% of her alters be in Kinnaman. And we'd expect that about 2% of Beatrice's alters would show up in Basindo. For those few bears that are in Basindo, on the other hand, we would expect that not very many of their alters would be in Basindo. 2%, 1 out of 50. If induced homophily is what's going on, if tie formation is by chance alone, we'd expect a large number of them, almost a majority of them, to be in what? Kinnaman. We'd expect almost all of the alters of Aswale bears to be in Kinnaman. We'd expect to find, in short, Kinnaman alters all over the place. Basindo alters almost never. If, on the other hand, there is choice homophily going on, then we would expect for Beatrice, who is in the Kinnaman clan, that more than about 41% of her alters would be also in Kinnaman. We would find that if we have a Basindo bear, that more than 2% of Basindo bear alters would also be in Basindo. Now, it might not be that much. It might only be 15%. It doesn't have to be a majority for choice homophily to be working. It just has to be more than chance would predict alone, right? If you make friendships, bear buddies, with bears that are in your clan more often than the rough share of bears that are in your clan among all bears, then that is indicative, possibly, of some choice. So what do we actually find? Okay. What I've done here is I've taken the 7 out of the 10 bears, Benjamin, Periwinkle, Fifi, Ted, Baby, Timothy, and Beatrice, who have any alters at all. We can't talk about homophily among the 3 bears who have no alters, because homophily is all about alters in an ego network. So, among those bears, then I've noticed which clan they're in. So Beatrice is in the Kinnaman clan, right? And so we know that the percent of all bears in the whole bear club that are in Ego's clan, that's going to be green, is 41%. We can go back and we can check. Oh, Kinnaman, about 41%. So we would expect, by chance alone, for there to be 41% of the alters in Beatrice's clan, she's the Ego, to reach about 41%. Similarly, Periwinkle. Well, what clan is Periwinkle in? Periwinkle is in the Nanook clan. Okay, and the Nanook clan has, if we look here, about 8% of all bears are in the Nanook clan. So we would expect about 8% of Periwinkle's alters to be in the Nanook clan. So look at Beatrice, look at Periwinkle. For Periwinkle, all of her alters are in the Nanook clan. Not 8%, all of them. Is that bigger than chance alone would predict? Yeah. What about Beatrice? Beatrice is in the Kinnaman clan, and so we should expect by chance alone 41% of her alters to be in Kinnaman. But the actuality is lower. In fact, if you look, there's an interesting thing that's going on here. For Benjamin, Fifi, Ted, and Baby, they're in clans that, we would expect to have some of their alters be in the same clan, if not that many. But actually, none of their alters are in the same clan. Timothy over here, finally, is in a clan that makes up 7% of the Bear Club, but 33% of his alters are in the Bear Club. So, do we find evidence of choice homophily here? If we only looked at Periwinkle and Timothy, we might say, yeah, I see homophily as this general trend. But it's not a general trend, choice homophily, because we see 5 counterexamples to those 2 examples in which the proportion is lower than what we would actually expect by chance. The bigger issue is that I'm only showing you 7 bears, and in order to really get an idea of what's going on among the 1,780 odd, 89 is it, bears, we would need to get a much bigger sample than this, at least 50 to 100, 200 would be nice. If we did that over and over and over again, we could find out whether, there's going to be some random variation perhaps, but whether there's really any choice homophily here that's operating, whether consistently the bears tend to be like Periwinkle and like Timothy, or whether if you average them out, the percentages tend to be about equal to the percentages of all bears in the Ego's clan, which is indicating that really what's happening is random chance kind of activity, which would be kind of an induced homophily. Or the third possibility is what? Remember, heterophily. Maybe the people who join the Bear Club are internationalists of the bear world, right? They're ambassadors. Maybe people who like to create a social network with pictures of their teddy bears are looking for friends, and they're looking for different friends. Maybe they're seeking others who are not in their same clan, which would explain why Benjamin, Fifi, Ted, and Baby don't have any alters that are like them. Maybe they're seeking difference in this online environment. We could find out by studying more bears. But I hope that this example of the Bear Club has shown you an example of the difference, the distinction between these two very different forms of homophily, coming from two very different kinds of organizations of the social world. One about the choices you make, and the other about the constraints that surround you, whether you're surrounded by people like you, or bears like you, or not.